Jonathan stood in the grand lobby of the Sterling Hotel, a towering glass structure in the heart of the city. The walls shimmered and the air buzzed with the excitement of travelers coming and going. It was a Tuesday afternoon and Jonathan was just passing through, but there was something about the place that made his heart race. He had come for a quick meeting, essential for his job as a junior consultant. The kind of job where you found yourself shuffled around like a deck of cards, always waiting for your turn. But today felt different. Today he could feel the energy in the air, the way the light spilled across the marble floors and how the elegant chandeliers cast intricate shadows. He took a deep breath, relishing the ambience, wishing he could be someone else if only for a moment. As Jonathan approached the front desk, he noticed a small group of executives clad in sharp suits chatting animatedly. Their laughter rang out, and Jonathan couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. They exuded a kind of confidence he longed to possess. Jonathan quickly averted his gaze, pretending to be engrossed in his phone. The receptionist's voice broke into his thoughts. He stepped forward, heart thumping in anxious rhythm. "Hi, I'm here for a meeting," he said, trying to sound more composed than he felt. The receptionist smiled warmly, flipping through her notes. "Jonathan Miller," he replied, lacking a hint of reassurance. "Ah, yes, you're on the list." Jonathan hesitated, an impulse tugging at him. "Actually, I could really use a quiet space to prepare." The receptionist's eyes sparkled. "Well, how about the executive floor?" Jonathan echoed, his heart skipping a beat. The words felt heavy with meaning, like an unexpected invitation into another world. She handed him a keycard and directed him to the elevator. With each step, he felt a mix of nerves and exhilaration. As the elevator doors closed, he watched the lights above him light up like tiny stars, marking each floor as they ascended. The tension twisted his stomach. What would he find on the executive floor? The elevator dinged, and the doors slid open into a world that felt entirely separate from the lobby below. Soft music played in the background, and the decor was sleek, with plush seating and panoramic views of the city skyline. Jonathan stepped out and took a deep breath, smelling coffee and fresh pastries. His eyes widened as he looked around. It felt luxurious, almost intimidating. A small kitchenette stood off to one side, stocked with snacks and beverages. In front of him were glass conference rooms where groups of people were deep in discussion, gestures animated and purposeful. He made his way to a secluded corner where a large window framed a breathtaking view. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful and surreal. He pulled out his laptop and opened his notes, trying to shake off the awe that threatened to distract him. But in that moment, he wasn't just a junior consultant. Here, on the executive floor, he felt like a part of something bigger. He wondered what it would be like to have an office here, to belong to this world. The people outside moved with ease, each conversation flowing seamlessly into the next, a rhythm he yearned to join. As he settled into his work, he couldn't help but observe the executives from the glass-walled conference rooms. They seemed so comfortable in their skin, so sure of themselves. What were they talking about? What decisions were being made? Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something profound. Lost in thought, he didn't notice when a tall woman with sharp features and a commanding presence entered the room. She was in her 40s, already holding the air of authority. As she approached, Jonathan quickly pretended to type, but he could feel her gaze on him, assessing. She asked, her voice smooth and firm. "I'm just visiting, actually," he stammered, a hint of embarrassment creeping up his neck. She chuckled softly, and for a moment it put him at ease. "You chose a good spot to visit, then." "I can see that," Jonathan replied, trying to sound confident, but inside he felt like a child wandering into the adult world, unsure of how to fit in. "Come join us," she said, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. His heart raced. Was this happening? He glanced back outside, spotting a few of the executives still deep in discussion. Could he really step into this world for just a moment? There was risk in saying yes, but also a thrill that beckoned him. "Sure, I'd love to," he said, surprising even himself. As he followed her into the conference room, Jonathan felt both excitement and fear closing in on him. The room buzzed with conversation and powerful energy. He took a seat at the long table, surrounded by faces that were both intimidating and welcoming. Each person looked at him with a mix of curiosity and intrigue, as if they were trying to gauge what he would bring to the table. They began discussing strategy for a new project, tossing ideas back and forth like a game of catch. Jonathan listened intently, absorbing the language they used, the concepts they threw around. It was a world he wanted to know, one where every word seemed charged with purpose. Then someone turned to him. He felt the eyes on him, wide and expectant. His voice trembled slightly. "I think the approach should focus more on customer engagement." Silence swallowed the room for a heartbeat, and Jonathan mentally cursed himself. Had he said the wrong thing? But then the woman who had brought him in leaned back, a smile creeping on her lips. "That's an interesting take," she said, nodding. The conversation resumed, now incorporating his thoughts. Jonathan felt a surge of confidence, mingled with disbelief. He was part of this, a ripple in the flow of ideas, and it felt sublime. As the meeting progressed, he contributed more, the tension in his shoulders easing as he found his rhythm. For those fleeting minutes, he was no longer the nervous junior consultant. He felt like they believed in him, and that was powerful. After the meeting, people began packing up their things, and Jonathan felt a rush of gratitude. He had entered as an outsider, but in those brief moments he had tasted something extraordinary, something that lingered in his bones. "Great ideas in there, Jonathan," the commanding woman said as they exited the room. "Thank you," he replied, trying to absorb everything she said. Those words hung in the air like promises, stirring ambition within him. As Jonathan walked back toward the elevator, he felt lighter. The weight of his insecurities was lifting. It was as if he had stepped into a new version of himself, someone who could speak, who had valuable thoughts, someone who could belong, but reality awaited him. As he reached the lobby, the grand energy of the hotel washed over him again. He still had his regular job, with all its expectations and limitations. The thrill of the executive floor was a blessing, but would it lead anywhere? Would it be just a momentary spark in a long, uncertain journey? Suddenly, the receptionist waved at him as he passed. She asked, a knowing smile on her face. "Honestly, it was amazing," Jonathan replied, unable to contain his excitement. Her words resonated like an echo of what he was beginning to realize. "You have something in you." Jonathan left the hotel, a world that had, even for just a moment, given him a glimpse into what could be. He stepped out into the bustling streets, the city alive with possibilities. The sunset painted a horizon rich with promise, and he felt as if he was on the precipice of something new. With each step, the image of the executive floor lingered in his mind, entwined with determination and hope, leaving him longing for more than he had ever known. Just a visitor, he mused, but somehow he realized his journey had just begun. "Just visiting," Jonathan said, and the receptionist's eyes widened as if he just unlocked a vault of possibilities. He hadn't meant to say it like that, but the moment felt right. In that crowded lobby of the Sterling Hotel, surrounded by glimmering hope and brisk business, those two words lifted him from the mundane into something extraordinary. The receptionist smiled, her fingers dancing over the keyboard. In seconds, she was handing him a sleek keycard, the kind that shimmered like a secret waiting to be discovered. Her tone was warm, almost conspiratorial. Jonathan's heart raced. He hadn't expected this, just a quick meeting, he thought, a pit stop in his often tedious job as a junior consultant. But here he was, suddenly whisked away to a place where responsibility blended with power and where the air crackled with vibrant energy. He stepped into the elevator, the soft hum of the machines and the faint scent of leather enveloping him. The doors closed, and he pressed the button for the top floor. As the elevator ascended, the lights above flickered, illuminating the possibilities growing in his mind. He could feel his heartbeat quickening. What would this executive floor hold for him? Hopes, dreams, connections, or perhaps just another fleeting moment of inspiration that would vanish when he stepped back into the real world. When the doors opened, he wasn't sure what to expect. But what lay ahead was a breathtaking view and a lavishly decorated lobby, untouched by the hustle below. The space felt larger than life. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting warm patterns on plush couches where people were engaged in animated discussions. The air was alive with ideas, ambition intertwining in every corner. "Wow," Jonathan breathed out, stepping inside as if he were entering a different realm. The ambience swirled around him, vibrant and intoxicating. Every detail of the room, with its sleek furniture and vibrant art, screamed success. Could see executives deep in conversation, their gestures grand and their laughter echoing through the open space. For a brief second, Jonathan marveled at the scene. The reality of his own life, a whirlwind of spreadsheets and reports, seemed so distant. He was just a visitor, but standing there, he felt the pull of something greater. Like a moth drawn to a flame, he took a step forward. As he meandered through the room, the intoxicating aroma of fresh coffee mingling with baked pastries wafted through the air. He spotted a small kitchenette and noticed a barista drawing smiles and caffeine from an espresso machine. Without thinking, Jonathan found himself wandering over. The barista asked, lifting an eyebrow playfully. "I'll take a black coffee, please," Jonathan replied, trying to sound composed. With each sip, he felt the energy surge through him, filling the empty spaces he never knew existed. Suddenly, a voice broke through his thoughts. "This is the first time I've seen someone so captivated by our little corner of the world," said a tall woman in a tailored suit, her presence commanding as she approached him. Jonathan turned, suddenly aware of how out of place he felt. "I'm just visiting. I had a meeting," he mumbled, surprised at how small his own words sounded in the face of her confidence. She echoed, a hint of mischief in her tone. "Then you've chosen wisely." Her name was Claire, and she was one of the senior executives, a powerhouse who commanded respect without raising her voice. The warmth of her smile was disarming, opening a door he had never knew existed. "Lucky me," Jonathan said with a smile that he hoped looked genuine. "Don't underestimate the power of being a visitor," Claire said, leaning closer. There was a pause as she studied him. "Care to join our brainstorming session?" Jonathan's mind raced, brainstorming with executives. This was beyond anything he had ever imagined. The thought of stepping into that conference room fired up his adrenaline. "Absolutely," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. As he followed Claire into the conference room, his stomach tumbled with excitement and anxiety. The space was equally impressive, filled with sleek furniture and a panoramic view of the city skyline. The executives were already gathered, engaged in lively debate about an upcoming project. "Everyone, this is Jonathan. He's visiting us today," Claire announced, her voice firm and inviting. Murmurs of greeting rippled through the room. Jonathan sat at the table, feeling the weight of their gazes. The energy shifted. They were hungry for ideas, their chairs slightly leaning in as if they were on the edge of their seats. He felt a rush of anticipation and fear merge within him. "All right, let's get started," Claire said, capturing their attention. "We're discussing a new strategy for engaging our clients." The focus suddenly turned towards him, and for a moment he felt like a deer caught in headlights. He took a deep breath, summoning the words as he tried to shake off the nerves. "I think we should consider how to deepen our client relationships through personalized interactions." The silence hit him like a wave and his heart plummeted. Had he said something wrong? But then someone nodded and Claire was smiling again. The conversation picked up, and for the first time he felt himself becoming part of it. He shared ideas, contributing to discussions, and with each word spoken he shed a layer of his insecurities. The tension of the room melted into collaboration. "Exactly, our clients want to feel valued," an executive chimed in, building on Jonathan's idea. Jonathan's heart soared. He wasn't just a visitor anymore, he was part of a bigger picture. The realization filled him with a powerful rush, pushing him further into the conversation. With each idea exchanged, the executives began to draw him in deeper, asking questions, challenging his thoughts, and every moment felt electrifying. He glanced at Claire, who wore an approving smile, and felt a wave of gratitude. Here he was, a junior consultant, sharing a room full of powerful people, all because he had dared to say just a few words. As the meeting wrapped up, Claire turned to Jonathan. "You have great instincts." His heart leaped at the compliment, with emotions tumbling inside him like an avalanche. "Thank you," he managed to say, trying to contain the elation that threatened to explode from him. People began packing up, and Jonathan lingered, reluctant to leave the energy behind. Claire approached him again, her demeanor shining with warmth. "Do you have time to grab a bite today?" Every pulse surged in his veins. "Really? Yes, I have time," he said, excitement bubbling within him. They found a small cafe not too far away, everything buzzing with the life of the city. Claire shared insights about the company, brushing past the barriers of formality. John learned about her journey from being an intern to climbing the corporate ladder. It was a tale of challenges and victories, laced with humor that made him feel more connected. "And you," she said, looking him directly in the eyes, "you have untapped potential." Uncertainty nibbled at him. "But I'm just a visitor," Jonathan laughed awkwardly, but her gaze was steady and serious. "Exactly, Jonathan." She leaned back, studying him. "The corporate world often forgets the power of new eyes." The words ignited something within him. He had always felt as if he were skimming the surface of his potential, trapped in a cycle of scripts and templates. But there, sitting across from Claire, hope filled every crack. She saw something in him, a spark waiting to ignite. As they finished lunch, Jonathan felt that he had stepped into a new narrative. This wasn't just a temporary visit, it was a shift. Each conversation added another layer to his understanding, revealing an avenue he had never thought possible. The executive floor had given him more than just a taste of power. It had handed him keys to future opportunities. Days turned into weeks as Jonathan returned to his office. He went back to the mundane tasks that awaited him, but the memory of the executive floor remained deeply etched in his mind. The thrill of that experience hung around him like a warm embrace, continuously reminding him that change was possible. He began to apply the insights he had gained from that day into his work. He started engaging his team in new ways, encouraging feedback loops and open discussions. The ripples of that meeting carried through multiple layers, impacting not only him but everyone around him. They took notice, impressed by his fresh ideas and his shimmering newfound confidence. Then one morning, a familiar email landed in his inbox. It was from Claire. She suggested, and his heart raced with excitement. It was a reminder that being just a visitor had catapulted him into a narrative he never anticipated. When they met, Claire asked Jonathan about his progress, and he spoke about the positive changes he had initiated in his team. Claire's face lit up, and she nodded thoughtfully. "You're a natural, Jonathan." The path before him suddenly seemed broader than before. He felt more capable of navigating it, ready to take every step with purpose. "I'd love to explore that," he admitted, excitement swelling within him. Claire leaned back in her chair, the corners of her mouth tugging upward. "Good, because we could use someone like you. Why don't you shadow me for a few weeks?" Jonathan stared at her, mind reeling at the prospect. This was more than he had imagined when he first walked into that lobby. The thread of fate had intertwined his path with hers, and each conversation, each meeting had drawn him deeper into a world he had only dreamed of. "I'd be honored," he finally said, his voice steady. As the days passed, Jonathan dove headfirst into this new phase of his life. He shadowed Claire, attending meetings, making connections, and forming relationships with the other executives. Every interaction drove him to embrace his potential, molding him into a stronger, more confident professional. He often reflected on that day, the moment he said, "just visiting," to the receptionist. it had been far from an ordinary turn of events. Life's opportunities often arrive disguised in simple moments, moments that can lead to extraordinary changes if you're brave enough to grasp them. In just a few months, Jonathan became more than just a visitor. He became a player in the game, carving out a space for himself among the movers and shakers. Claire's faith in him only fueled his ambition, waking a fire within that pushed him forward. It was an unexpected journey, but one that was shaping him profoundly. The executive floor had opened his eyes to a world filled with potential, reminding him that sometimes all you need is a daring step into the unknown to set off a chain of transformative events. And in the end, he discovered that being a visitor was not about a momentary escape. It was about the courage to dream beyond boundaries, to redefine who he thought he was, and to embrace the possibility of greatness. As he stood at the edge of his new reality, Jonathan knew there was much more awaiting him. What began as a simple visit had paved the way for a lifetime of opportunities, an adventure that had just begun. "Just visiting," Jonathan said, with a hint of nervousness in his voice, yet those two words opened a door to an extraordinary experience he would never have expected. It was supposed to be a standard meeting at the Sterling Hotel, a towering monument of glass and steel that gleamed under the sunlight. Jonathan wasn't even supposed to be there for long. Just a brief stop to hash out some details with a client. But standing in that spacious lobby with its high ceilings and flowing waterfall features made him feel small and alive all at once. The atmosphere buzzed with energy, every person hurrying to their next appointment, their faces a mix of determination and focus. As he approached the front desk, Jonathan found himself admiring the elegant receptionist. Her poised demeanor stood in stark contrast to the anxiety swirling inside him. "Hi, I'm here for a meeting," he said, his voice wavering slightly as he fished for his name in the mental sea of his anxiety. She asked without looking up, fingers dancing over the keyboard. The moment she found his reservation, her expression shifted and a warm smile broke across her face. "Ah, we've been expecting you. You're actually on the list for the executive floor." Jonathan blinked, hardly able to comprehend what she was saying. She finished, winking as she handed him a sleek keycard. His heart raced. The elevator ride felt like a lift into a different realm. The soft chime of the ascending floors echoed like a heartbeat, building his anticipation as he wondered what lay ahead. When the door slid open to reveal the executive floor, the air was different, charged with ambition, reverence, and opportunity. Sunlight streamed through towering windows, casting bright specks of light across a space that felt both imposing and welcoming. Sleek furniture lined a plush lounge area, where intense conversations filled the air, laughter and serious dialogue swirling like a fine cocktail. "Wow," Jonathan whispered, stepping into the room, both thrilled and terrified. He was captivated by the dynamic in this space, where high-stakes decisions were made and visionaries converged. He felt like an outsider stumbling upon a secret society. He took a moment to appreciate the surroundings, daring to imagine what it would be like to belong here, to sit at those tables as more than a visitor. Just then, a tall man with an air of confidence passed him, drawing Jonathan's attention. Clad in a perfectly tailored suit, he moved with purpose, exuding authority and presence. "Excuse me," Jonathan called out, unsure if he should approach. The man paused, turning to him with a curious gaze. "You're on the executive floor, aren't you?" "Just a consultation," Jonathan said, feeling vulnerability creep in. The man smirked as if Jonathan had let him in on an inside joke. He flashed a knowing smile. As Jonathan pushed open the door to the conference room, he felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. The sharp scent of coffee blended with the palpable enthusiasm of the people gathered around the large oval table. They were dynamic, full of energy, a group of decision-makers ready to brainstorm. Claire, a strong-willed executive he had briefly met during a previous engagement, acknowledged him with a confident grin. "Jonathan, glad to see a fresh face." Jonathan stammered, glancing around the room. Claire interrupted, eyes glinting with encouragement. He took a seat, mind racing as he felt the weight of their gazes. The conversation kicked off, centered on a new marketing strategy that needed development. They tossed around ideas, and for a moment, Jonathan simply observed, absorbing it all like a sponge. He felt his mind whirring, recalling the numbers and market trends he had studied but never truly understood. Finally, when one of the executives paused, Jonathan took a deep breath. "I think we should focus on our client's emotions." Sudden silence enveloped the room. Jonathan's heart raced. Had he crossed a line? Yet to his surprise, Claire leaned forward, intrigued. Interesting. He pushed himself to speak, remembering the conversations he had studied. People buy brands because they connect with them emotionally. The executives began to discuss, igniting their imaginations with Jonathan's insight. They built upon his idea, crafting scenarios and strategies that made Jonathan feel more alive than he had in years. The air thickened with brainstorming, ideas bouncing back and forth like a supercharged game of ping pong. Jonathan felt his anxiety dissolve, replaced by a sense of belonging. As the meeting wrapped up, Claire turned to him, an approving smile dancing on her lips. You have a knack for this." Instead, he forced himself to remain calm, nodding, thanking her for the opportunity. When the meeting ended, the executives filed out, but Jonathan hesitated. He lingered, unsure if he could let the moment slip away. It was a glimpse into a world he longed to enter, yet felt miles away from. Just as he contemplated merging back into the everyday, Claire approached him. "Let me show you around," she said, her warmth enveloping him as they walked through the rich, polished corridors, whispering tales of the company's founding legends and sharing insider secrets about their strategies. Jonathan hung onto every word, captivated by the storytelling and the glint of ambition in her eyes. "People often forget that vulnerability and ambition go hand in hand," Claire mused as they reached a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city. "In this world, you have to embrace both." "It sounds easier said than done," Jonathan replied, looking out at the sprawling view beneath them. The city was alive, a pulsating heart of opportunity and dreams. "Then start small, each risk is a step forward," she encouraged. "Just keep in mind your perspective matters." As they talked, Jonathan felt like he was shedding the layers of doubt he had worn for so long. Perhaps he didn't have to stay in the shadows forever. After their tour, Jonathan left the executive floor with a renewed sense of the world outside felt brighter, almost tangible. He returned to the mundane tasks at his base office, but now the weight of possibility pressed in on him. The memory of the executive floor lingered in the back of his mind, pushing him to engage more with his colleagues, to bring fresh ideas they might never have considered. One day, as he was gathering input for a client presentation, Jonathan decided to go all in. He suggested during a team meeting. The room was blossoming with discussions, and Jonathan felt a rush of excitement building. Instead of hesitating or retreating, he felt himself becoming bolder. Ideas flowed, forming a barrage of enthusiasm as his team embraced the fresh energy. For the first time, their work felt electric, driven by passion rather than just contracts. Weeks passed, and every meeting became a canvas for his creativity. Claire had been right. Fresh perspectives could alter the ground beneath their feet. One evening, while sitting at his desk deep in thought, Jonathan received an email. It was from Claire again. "I'd like to present you with an opportunity," she wrote. "Join us as a contributor for the next executive retreat." Jonathan stared at the screen, hardly able to believe what he was reading. An opportunity for him. It was a thrilling moment, mixing disbelief and excitement, a cocktail of emotions bubbling over. When he met with Claire to discuss it further, she laid out plans, objectives, and discussions they hoped to facilitate. "We want to encourage our leadership team to engage with emerging voices," she remarked. Jonathan nodded, trying to absorb the weight of the moment. He dove into preparation, crafting ideas and presentations that challenged the traditional approach, fueling discussions around innovation and vulnerability in leadership. The executive retreat became a vibrant exchange of ideas, alive with energy and ambition, and Jonathan felt like a man standing on the brink of something monumental. As he addressed the room of executives, he realized how far he had come. The nervous junior consultant he once was had transformed, replaced by someone bold and confident with a voice worth sharing. He spoke passionately, and when he finished, applause erupted around him, warming his heart. "You've sparked something here," Claire said later as they stood outside, the sun setting, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. His heart swelled. As the evening progressed, Jonathan started to see the connections being woven around him. With each conversation, the once imposing figures of authority transformed into allies. He felt part of a community, not just a visitor. In that grand moment, he understood what he had once overlooked. The complexities of his journey were layered with risk, growth, and the creation of a voice he never knew he had. Months later, walking through familiar halls of the Sterling Hotel, Jonathan smiled at the receptionist who had once handed him the keycard. "Just visiting," he said with a grin, no longer thinking of fleeting moments but of lasting impact. And now he wasn't just passing through, he was helping shape the landscape he once found intimidating. Yet he was still that curious mind, eager to learn, ready to explore. "Just visiting," he mused, feeling the weight of possibility surge within him. After all, every moment held the potential for transformation. Each visit could lead to something extraordinary if only one took the first step. In the end, it wasn't merely about the floor he had visited, it was about the heights he had yet to reach. "Just visiting," Jonathan said, and those two words sent a ripple of intrigue through the lobby of the Sterling Hotel. He stood there, feeling entirely out of place amidst the flash of suits and the clink of martini glasses. This was a world of ambition, where power was exchanged like currency, and confidence radiated from every corner. Jonathan had arrived to conduct a routine meeting as part of his job with a small consulting firm, but now, standing in that grand space, he felt like a child peering through the windows of a candy store. The receptionist, a poised woman with an air of authority, raised an eyebrow at his words. "Just visiting, you say?" With a bright smile, she tapped away at her keyboard, her fingers dancing with purpose. The next moment, she was handing him a shimmering keycard, a tangible symbol of access to a world he hadn't even dreamed of. "Welcome to the executive floor," she said, her tone almost conspiratorial. Jonathan's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't expected this. hadn't even considered the idea of stepping through those unmarked doors where the heavy hitters of the company conducted their business. His heart raced as the elevator doors closed behind him and the rhythmic ascent began. What lay ahead? Would he find the chance he had always longed for, or would it be just another moment lost in time? When the doors opened, Jonathan felt like he had stepped into an alternate universe. The executive floor glimmered with opulence, filled with sleek furniture and expansive views of the city skyline. Touches of modernity intermingled with elegance. The lighting felt softer, the air richer, and the conversations more profound. He caught sight of a group of executives in a meeting room, animated faces, hands gesturing enthusiastically, ideas bouncing off the walls. Jonathan could almost taste the ambition in the air. Suddenly he felt small again, like an uninvited guest at a grand party. Was this really a place for someone like him? Shaking off the doubt, he moved to the lounge area where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with anticipation. As he glanced around, he spotted Claire, a colleague from his firm who worked closely with clients. She was wrapped up in a discussion, her posture confident, her smile infectious. There was something about her that made Jonathan feel at ease. "Hey, Jonathan," she called out, her voice bright amidst the murmur of the crowd. "It's amazing," he replied, still grappling with awe. Claire laughed, a sound as refreshing as the coffee. "You know, just because you're a junior consultant doesn't mean you can't enjoy the best parts of this business." Her invitation felt like a lifeline, and he joined her. As they sat together, Claire introduced him to various executives. Each handshake was firm, each greeting warm, and they seemed genuinely interested in hearing what he had to say. It caught him off guard. These were seasoned professionals, yet they were curious about a visitor like him. "Tell us about your latest project," one of the executives said, genuinely engaged. Jonathan hesitated, but then, inspired by Claire's confidence, he found his voice. He began sharing insights from the project he was working on, his passion spilling over with every word. As he spoke, he noticed the executives leaning in, their attention undivided. They were nodding, exchanging glances that suggested interest. Jonathan felt alive, and then something extraordinary happened. After his brief presentation, one of the executives spoke up. "You've got a unique perspective." His heart raced at the suggestion. Was this really happening? Just days ago, he hadn't known if he belonged in this lofty world, and now his ideas were sparking interest. I haven't considered that," he stammered, caught off guard. Claire interjected, her eyes shining with encouragement. "You've got a fresh way of looking at things." The warmth of their interest enveloped him, igniting something deep inside, a yearning to take a leap into the unknown. It felt like he was standing at the edge of a cliff, peering down at the vibrant world below, and he could either retreat back to safety or dive into the exhilarating unknown. "Maybe," he found himself saying, his heart full of hope and uncertainty at once. The conversation continued to swirl around him, ideas unfurling like sails in the wind. He couldn't quite believe he was here, exchanging thoughts with leaders who had paved their own paths through carefully crafted careers. This was a place where strategy met creativity, where innovation blossomed amidst the pressures of performance. As the meeting wrapped up, Jonathan felt a rush of exhilaration. Claire turned to him, eyes bright with excitement. "You really impressed them." "Thank you," he replied, wishing he could bottle the feeling of acceptance. "You have so much untapped potential," she said, leaning in closer, her smile beaming. "Don't let that slide away." Her words haunted him, running on a loop in his mind. Just visiting, he had thought he was, but now, as he left the executive floor, each step felt charged with new possibilities. He absorbed his surroundings, the gleaming lights and the vibrant conversations, and realized he was no longer watching from the sidelines. He had participated. For the first time, he felt like he was standing on the edge of a thrilling journey, ready to carve his own path. Back at his firm, Jonathan couldn't shake the energy from the executive floor. Each day became a canvas for experimentation. Where once he followed directives, now he began to challenge the status quo. He sparked discussions in meetings, urging his colleagues to share ideas more openly. Passion radiated from him, igniting a sense of camaraderie that hadn't existed before. One afternoon, during a lull in their routine, Jonathan gathered everyone around. "What if we turned our next pitch into a storytelling experience?" His words hung in the air, and for a second, silence enveloped the room. Then suddenly, conversations broke out, animated discussions erupting like fireworks. Everyone was on board, ideas blending and expanding into something vibrant and alive. In that moment, Jonathan felt a sense of accomplishment that swelled within him. Change was happening, and he had pushed the first domino. Time slipped by, and with each passing week, he felt closer to realizing his ambitions. The once intimidating figures in the corporate world were becoming mentors, guiding him to find his voice. Jonathan discovered that the more he opened up, the more people responded in kind. It brought to mind something he had read once about the psychology of connection. When someone shares their vulnerability, it encourages others to lower their guards as well. In embracing his own uncertainty and ambition, he forged bonds that led him deeper into uncharted waters. One crisp morning, as the sun filtered through the glass windows of his office, an email arrived from Claire. "Let's catch up soon." Excited yet nervous, Jonathan arrived at their meeting, wondering if his ambitions had translated into something tangible. Over coffee, he shared stories of his growing influence within the team, the shift in dynamic, and how they'd started implementing storytelling into their pitches. Claire listened, nodding with a thoughtful expression. "That's incredible, Jonathan. I see you're really finding your stride. Would you be interested in presenting some of these ideas to the executive board?" His heart raced, nerves bubbling in his stomach. "Yes," Jonathan asked, uncertainty chipping away at his confidence. "I know so," Claire responded, her voice steady. "You've come so far since that first day when you said just visiting." An unfamiliar sense of possibility washed over him. Could he really present to the board? It felt like stepping onto a stage amidst a roaring crowd, a thrilling kind of fear coursing through his veins. "All right, let's do it," he agreed boldly, wanting to capture this moment of growth. Over the next few days, Jonathan immersed himself in preparation, crafting a presentation that combined storytelling with data-driven insights. Each slide felt like a step deeper into a dream he hadn't fully allowed himself to envision. Then the day arrived. Standing outside the boardroom, his heart raced with excitement and fear. What if it went poorly? What if they dismissed his ideas? But then he recalled every moment leading up to this point, from that initial handshake to the spark of inspiration shared in the lounge. He was ready to embrace the challenge. As he entered the boardroom, all eyes turned to him, a sea of seasoned leaders, their faces a blend of curiosity and expectation. Taking a moment to steady himself, he began his presentation, his voice filled with passion as he weaved storytelling into the flow of data. Each word carried weight, each pause added gravity. He shared not just numbers, but the stories behind them, the narratives of clients whose lives would change through their work. With every anecdote, he felt the room respond, a palpable energy weaving through the air as the executives engaged with him. When he finished, silence fell over the room before applause erupted. He looked around, disbelief washing over him. They were interested, engaged, and they applauded his efforts. The board members exchanged glances, whispering about the ideas he had shared. In that moment, Jonathan felt the weight of his journey lift. He had stepped through the doors of the executive floor, not just as a visitor, but as a contributor, a team member who belonged. That evening, as he walked through the lavish lobby of the Sterling Hotel once again, the atmosphere felt changed. Each glimmer, each conversation echoed the growth he had experienced. No longer just a passerby, he had transformed into an integral part of the world he'd once thought was unattainable. The receptionist greeted him, and he grinned, knowing he would return to this place, not just as a visitor, but as someone who had embraced opportunities and created his own path forward. Where the journey would take him next was uncertain, but as long as he dared to step into the unknown, he knew anything was possible. "Just visiting," he would say again, but with newfound strength, ready to explore whatever came next. After all, each visit could become a milestone, and the only limit was his own imagination. "Just visiting," Jonathan said, and suddenly the room seemed to buzz with energy. It wasn't merely a phrase, it was a key that opened doors he never imagined would swing wide. The grand lobby of the Sterling Hotel was a whirlwind of activity, as people hustled between meetings, their heels clicking on the marble floor like a ticking clock. Jonathan felt the rush of excitement amplifying his heartbeat. He was here for a simple client meeting, yet as he took in the gleaming chandeliers and the elegant decor, he realized he had stepped into a different world, a realm where ambition intertwined with elegance. The receptionist, a poised woman with piercing eyes, paused at his words. She echoed, raising an eyebrow. Without a second thought, she began typing furiously, her fingers flying across the keyboard like a pianist in full concert. Jonathan felt a mix of surprise and curiosity tingling in his veins. Moments later, she handed him a sleek keycard. "Welcome to the executive floor," she said, her tone laced with intrigue. Jonathan echoed, disbelief mingling with a flicker of excitement. He hadn't expected this. Just a visitor now granted access to the inner sanctum of power in the corporate world. As he walked toward the elevator, he couldn't shake the feeling that something special was about to unfold. With each floor he ascended, the anticipation swelled. What would this place hold? As the elevator doors opened, Jonathan stepped into a scene that felt almost surreal. The executive floor was bathed in soft light, creating an atmosphere brimming with possibility. Expansive windows offered breathtaking views of the city, where the skyline pierced the clouds like the aspirations of everyone inside. He gazed around, his heart racing. Plush seating areas adorned the space, and small groups of executives engaged in animated discussions. Voices filled the air, merging ideas with laughter, a symphony of ambition that struck a chord deep within him. As Jonathan wandered deeper, he caught sight of an impressive group in a glass conference room. They looked every bit the part, sharp suits, focused expressions, and hands animatedly painting pictures of their visions. He felt a mix of envy and desire. Here were people who made things happen, who shaped destinies, and he was just visiting. A voice broke through his thoughts. He turned to see Claire, a colleague from his firm he hadn't seen in a while. Her vibrant smile radiated positivity. He replied, feeling a new wave of confidence with her familiar presence. "Welcome to where the real magic happens," she said, gesturing toward the conference room. Want to sit in? Jonathan hesitated, the fear of being out of place nipping at him. But the thrill of possibility pulled him closer. He answered, surprising even himself. As they entered the conference room, Jonathan's pulse quickened. The executives turned, their eyes fixing on him with interest. In a heartbeat, he felt the weight of their expectations. He was no longer an observer, he was a participant standing on the precipice of something extraordinary. Claire introduced him, and as she spoke, Jonathan felt his stomach flutter. "This is Jonathan, one of our up-and-coming consultants." The room shifted then, the energy crackling in the air as Jonathan settled into a chair. He could feel the anticipation building. Ideas were floating around, and he was being thrust into the mix. One of the executives asked, breaking the silence, "Our latest strategy is to enhance client engagement, but we want fresh viewpoints." He hesitated, the weight of the question pressing down on him. Was this a joke? He was just a junior consultant. But the way they looked at him, their eyes searching, waiting, sparked something inside. I think we need to focus on how our clients feel," he finally said, the words tumbling out. "People connect with emotions." The room fell silent for a moment, then unexpectedly a ripple of nods moved through the group. Jonathan felt a rush. They were listening, actually considering his words. It was a small victory, but one that ignited a fire inside him. Claire chimed in, excitement brightening her voice. "You're right, Jonathan." As the discussion continued, Jonathan began to contribute more, each comment helping to shape the direction of the discussion. With every nod, he felt himself blooming, shedding the hesitation that previously cloaked him. The executives began to explore the very ideas they had dismissed earlier, recruiting his fresh perspective with genuine enthusiasm. After an hour that felt like a mere heartbeat, the meeting concluded, the room buzzing with the energy of collaboration. Jonathan left with Claire, the exhilaration still coursing through him. She said, her voice full of warmth. Jonathan's heart soared. "I can't believe I actually spoke up." "Why not? Your ideas matter. You belong in rooms like that just as much as anyone else," she replied. Those words lingered with him, embedding themselves in his mind. Perhaps he was more than just a visitor. Perhaps he had a place in this world of ambition. After that day, something shifted within Jonathan. Each morning, he approached his work with renewed purpose. The thrill of the executive floor lingered, driving him to engage more with his team. They began experimenting with narrative-driven presentations, capturing the attention of clients like never before. It was like a chain reaction. Their work became infused with a vibrant energy. They started winning pitches, revitalizing their brand, and Jonathan found himself at the center of it all, the team rallying around his ideas. Weeks turned into months, and the once terrifying prospect of standing in front of their clients no longer felt insurmountable. He embraced opportunities, pushing the boundaries that used to tether him down. And with each successful pitch came another burst of confidence, a spiral of growth. One afternoon, while preparing for a crucial presentation, Jonathan received an email that made his heart race. Claire wanted to meet. They sat across from each other at a local coffee shop bustling with life. "Jonathan," she began, her voice steady, "the executives noticed your contributions." He felt his breath hitch. "Me. The energy you brought to the executive floor has been a game changer. We need that mentality throughout the team," she reassured him. "Wow, I don't know what to say," he stammered, a mix of disbelief and joy churning inside him. "Say yes," she urged. Overwhelmed, he nodded slowly. "Yes." Excitement bubbled up, mingling with nervous energy. Joining the strategy team meant stepping further into uncharted territory. He could already feel the weight of their expectations, the pressure to live up to the role, yet the exhilaration outweighed any fears. As the weeks unfolded, Jonathan immersed himself in his new role. Meetings now filled his days, bursts of strategy and creativity colliding in real time. He became a bridge between departments, facilitating communication and encouraging everyone to share their ideas. But there were challenges. Rooted habits and old systems clashed with his fresh approach, resistance surfacing in certain circles. Months of pushing for change left him feeling drained at times. One evening, while reflecting on his journey, Jonathan sat alone at his desk, the glow of his computer illuminating the late hour. He remembered that day in the lobby, the thrill of being granted access to the executive floor. It had ignited a spark, motivating him to rise through layers of doubt. He realized that vulnerability, sharing his struggles and ambitions, had led him to this moment. It was a lesson he now understood deeply, one he could apply to the team he was building. The next morning, Jonathan called for a meeting. As he stood before them, he felt the familiar rush of nerves, but this time he was fueled by purpose. "I want us to talk about where we're struggling," he started, scanning the room. Confidently, he shared how he had once felt like the outsider, the just visiting guy, and how that perspective had shaped his vision for their team. He encouraged everyone to embrace their vulnerabilities, creating an environment where fear of failure didn't paralyze innovation. To his surprise, the room buzzed with engagement. Colleagues who once sat quietly now offered their opinions, feedback flowing freely. They shared challenges, dreams, and aspirations as the atmosphere transformed into something electric. In that moment, Jonathan understood that true leadership wasn't just about strategy, it was about connection. He had taken a leap forward, turning vulnerability into strength. It opened a new chapter for everyone in the room. As they wrapped up the meeting, colleagues shared their excitement about the path ahead. "Thank you for this," one of them said, gratitude evident in their eyes. Jonathan smiled, a warmth swelling in his chest. He had transformed from that nervous consultant who was once just visiting into a leader who embraced challenges head-on. Months passed and the team thrived. Together, they navigated the waters of corporate strategy with renewed vigor, pushing boundaries and challenging the status quo. Jonathan found himself embraced by colleagues. With each collaboration, he cemented his place in this world. One day, Claire approached him again, her face bright with enthusiasm. "We're getting ready for the annual executive gala." A wave of disbelief washed over him once more. "Yes, you've become a key part of our journey. It's time for the entire company to see that," she said with certainty. Standing in front of the crowd that evening, Jonathan felt the weight of the moment. The room buzzed with anticipation. Executives and colleagues gathered, their eyes trained on him. This time, he wasn't just a visitor. He was a pivotal player, the embodiment of growth and resilience. As he spoke, his words flowed naturally, painting vivid pictures of their successes, the hurdles they had overcome, and the bonds they had formed. He could see the faces of his team, their pride reflecting back at him. When he finished, the applause thundered through the air, a wave of connection washing over him. That feeling, the one he had felt the day he first stepped onto the executive floor, returned stronger than ever. As the night progressed, Jonathan mingled with executives and colleagues alike, feeling like he truly belonged. He had traveled a remarkable journey since saying just visiting that day in the lobby, from obscurity to leadership, fear to confidence. Months later, standing outside the Sterling Hotel once again, he took a moment to breathe in the atmosphere, the same excitement, the same ambition swirling around him. But he wasn't merely an observer anymore. The receptionist said, her smile comforting in the bright lights. His journey was still unfolding, yet he knew now that every visit could become something transformative. Every moment had led him to this, a reminder that daring to step into the unknown could lead to unimaginable opportunities. He felt invigorated, ready for the next chapter and beyond, realizing that being just visiting was never meant to confine him. Instead, it had been the catalyst for growth, resilience, and the courage to dream bigger than ever before. "Just visiting," Jonathan said, his voice barely above a whisper, as he handed over his ID at the front desk of the Sterling Hotel. Little did he know those two simple words would open doors he had only ever dreamt of. As the receptionist scanned his ID, her expression shifted from routine to intrigue. "Just visiting, you say?" She tapped a few keys, her fingers dancing over the keyboard like a conductor leading an orchestra. Moments later, she handed him a sleek silver keycard, her eyes sparkling with a hint of mischief. An electric thrill shot through Jonathan as he took the card. His heart thumped wildly in his chest. He had come for a mundane meeting, but now something unexpected was unfolding. The elevator doors slid shut, and as he pressed the button, he felt the weight of curiosity and anxiety washing over him. What awaited him at the top? The elevator's ascent felt like a countdown to a major event, and he could feel the excitement building within him. When the doors opened, it was as if he had stepped into another world. The executive floor gleamed under bright lights, spacious and luxurious. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a breathtaking view of the city, the skyline rising like dreams made tangible. Plush couches adorned the lounge area where small groups of people chatted animatedly, a buzz of sharp minds sharing ideas and ambitions. Jonathan stepped out, his heart racing. He felt like a kid in a candy store, wide-eyed and overwhelmed, and yet there was something deeply inviting about the atmosphere. Each conversation drifted to him, laced with purpose and possibility. As he moved deeper into the room, he caught sight of a gathering in a sleek glass conference room. There they sat, executives clad in sharp suits, their gestures animated as they strategized. It struck him then these were the people who made it happen, who forged paths, and he was simply a visitor, an outsider. Just then Claire, a colleague from his firm, emerged from the conference room, her face lighting up upon seeing him. "Jonathan, you made it. It's incredible," he replied, step by step, feeling the energy pulsing around him. "I didn't realize it would feel so." "Welcome to where the magic happens," she said, a hint of playfulness in her tone. "Want to join the meeting?" Jonathan hesitated, anxiety creeping in. The thought of speaking in front of high-level executives filled him with dread. "Me? Absolutely, just don't overthink it. Come on," Claire urged, already leading him toward the conference room. As they entered, the atmosphere shifted, eyes turned toward him. Suddenly, Jonathan felt acutely aware of the weight of his presence. There he stood, a junior consultant thrust into the spotlight, cheeks flushed and heart racing. Claire introduced him with a brightness that filled the room. "Everyone, this is Jonathan." The executives welcomed him with nods, and the conversation continued, weaving in and out of strategy and creativity. Jonathan observed, absorbing the energy in the room, the way thoughts flowed seamlessly from one person to another. Then one of the executives leaned in, directing his attention firmly toward Jonathan. "What's your take on our current strategy?" The moment hung in the air, heavy with expectation. Jonathan's heart raced. He was just a visitor, but something within him flared alive. Well, I think we should focus more on how our clients feel. It's not just about the product, it's about the experience we create for them, he said, surprising even himself with the confidence in his voice. The room went silent and Jonathan's pulse quickened. Had he crossed a line, but then he sensed a shift. Claire's eyes brightened and the executives began nodding, absorbing his words. Interesting point, said one executive, leaning forward. Encouraged, he continued, weaving his thoughts into a narrative. People remember how you make them feel. The room buzzed with renewed energy. Members bounced ideas off each other, sparked by Jonathan's input. As he spoke, he felt more and more like a participant, stepping into the roles of strategist and creator. The executive's interest felt like a wave lifting him higher, and he rode it, buoyed by their engagement. After an hour that felt like a whirlwind, the meeting concluded, but not before the executive chairperson voiced a comment that sent exhilaration coursing through Jonathan. You've got a unique perspective, Jonathan. We need fresh ideas like yours in our team. His heart skipped a beat. Was this really happening? Just days ago, he had felt invisible, a mere cog in a vast machine, and now he was being invited to be part of that machine in a more meaningful way. I haven't thought about it, but I would love to explore that, he managed to reply, barely able to contain his excitement. Claire beamed at him as they stepped out of the conference room. I told you they saw what I saw. Feeling emboldened by the experience, Jonathan couldn't dismiss the thrill budding in his chest. Hadn't he always wanted to be part of something bigger? This unexpected opportunity filled him with hope. In the following days, the energy from the executive floor lingered with him. He returned to his office with renewed determination. What would take him from the sidelines to the forefront was no longer a distant dream, it was within reach. He started engaging his colleagues differently. During meetings, he became a voice for ideas that had long been buried beneath fear and doubt. Seeking input became the norm, and he encouraged open expression. Conversations that once hovered awkwardly shifted into rich dialogues filled with enthusiasm. Let's push boundaries, he urged one day, pacing in front of his team. His passion ignited a spark among them. Slowly, the atmosphere shifted from one of skepticism to inspiration, buoyed by shared ambition. They brainstormed innovative pitches, creating narratives that captured the essence of their brand like never before. As success blossomed, Jonathan realized he was no longer just visiting. He was part of the executive narrative, contributing in meaningful ways. It wasn't just about the job, it was about leaving a distinct mark on the company and growing alongside it. Yet challenges emerged. As they pushed for change, some colleagues resisted the shift in approach, clinging to older methodologies. Jonathan felt the pressure building, anxiety clawing at his resolve, but he refused to back down. One evening, as he sat in his office reflecting on everything, he realized something pivotal. True leadership harnessed vulnerability. He remembered how he once felt like an outsider. Leveraging that experience could strengthen his connection with his team. The next morning, he summoned his team for a meeting, a risky choice, but one he believed was necessary. As he stood before them, he took a deep breath. I want us to be real with each other today, he began, his voice steady. We've made great strides, but I know we've faced challenges too. The room fell silent, eyes trained on him. It took courage to open this space for honesty, but he pressed on. I was once terrified to speak up, unsure if my ideas mattered, but I learned that being vulnerable is a strength. It fosters connection and collaboration. Unexpectedly, someone spoke up. I have felt the same way. As they began to share their fears and aspirations, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations flowed as colleagues opened up, revealing their own struggles and dreams. Jonathan watched in awe. The very culture he had hoped to build was taking shape right in front of him. The tides had turned. Each person shared insights, building upon one another's thoughts. They left the meeting motivated, the burdens of doubt lifted. For Jonathan, it was a realization that vulnerability opened doors to collaboration and creativity. In the following months, the team continued to grow. They cultivated an innovative atmosphere and began to see results. Their projects flourished, and the company's reputation grew stronger. The narrative they crafted resonated with clients, building deeper connections and fostering loyalty. One day, as Jonathan prepared for another meeting, he received an unexpected email. It was from the executive board, inviting him to present their year's achievements at the annual gala. His heart raced. This was an opportunity to showcase everything they had accomplished, to shine a light on the team's growth. As the event drew closer, nerves crept in. Could he handle standing in front of the company's influential figures, inspiring them with the journey they had undertaken? Preparing his presentation, he channeled his emotion and passion into every slide. He wanted to celebrate his team and their collective efforts, highlighting the changes they had embraced together. The day of the gala arrived. Standing in front of the grand hall, adorned with lights and decorations, Jonathan felt the weight of the moment. The room was filled with executives and colleagues, a sea of faces anchored in anticipation. Taking a deep breath, he stepped onto the stage. Good evening, everyone, he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. As he spoke about the successes, the moments of vulnerability, and the strength they had forged as a team, he saw heads nodding in agreement. It felt good to share their collective story. This wasn't just his journey, it was theirs, woven together like a rich tapestry. The response was overwhelming. Applause erupted, resonating in the hall, binding the audience in shared pride. Jonathan's heart swelled. He realized that in sharing their journey, he had built connections that transcended titles, their struggles and victories intertwined, forming a robust community. As the event proceeded, Jonathan mingled and embraced colleagues who shared heartfelt gratitude, their eyes shining. They recognized not only their own journeys but the growth they had achieved together, fueled by collaboration and a vision for the future. Weeks passed, and Jonathan continued to thrive within the company. His friendship with Claire deepened, and they often reflected on their time at the executive floor. What started with just visiting had transformed into something monumental, an opportunity to redefine their paths and support others along the way. Looking back, Jonathan understood that it was those two simple words that had set everything in motion. Just a visit had evolved into an expedition of growth, courage, and connection. Days turned into months, and as Jonathan stood outside the Sterling Hotel again, he took a moment to soak in the bustle of life around him. The receptionist smiled and he grinned in return. "I'm not just visiting anymore," he replied, confidence radiating from him. He had transformed from a timid consultant to a key player in a world where dreams could become reality. Embracing this narrative, he realized that every visit had the potential to change lives, to forge paths into the unknown. With each step forward, he discovered the power of connection, the strength of vulnerability, and the gift of collaboration. And in that shimmering moment, Jonathan felt the possibilities stretch out before him, a canvas awaiting his next stroke, ready to capture the dreams that lay ahead. "Just visiting," Jonathan said, trying to sound casual as he handed over his ID at the front desk. A ripple of surprise ran through the receptionist as she scanned his ID, and an intrigued look crossed her face. "Just visiting, huh? Let's make that visit unforgettable," she replied, her fingers dancing over the keyboard. Before he could respond, she smiled and handed him a silver keycard. His heart raced as he took the card. This was unexpected, a glimpse into a world he had only heard about, the world of high-stakes executives and critical decisions. More than just a stop for a quick meeting, this was a chance to see what lay behind those heavy doors. As the elevator doors closed, Jonathan felt the rush of excitement mixed with nervousness. The light above him blinked, counting up each floor like a heartbeat, reminding him that with every click of the number, he was ascending towards something both thrilling and intimidating. When the door slid open, he stepped into a labyrinth of polished marble and sleek furniture bathed in warm light. The atmosphere buzzed with energy, and each breath he took was charged with ambition as he took in the spacious lounge area dotted with plush chairs and collaborative groups of executives in deep discussion. Jonathan felt his pulse quicken, uncertainty flooding his mind. He was a junior consultant, not part of this elite circle, but the atmosphere beckoned him. It felt alive, a crossroads where dreams were forged and futures were shaped. As he ventured further, he noticed a glass conference room where the executives seemed to be discussing something crucial, their voices rising and falling like the tide. He stood frozen for a moment, envy fluttering in his stomach. These were decision makers, people who commanded respect. He could only imagine the weight of ambition that filled that space. Just then he spotted Claire, a colleague he hadn't seen in a while, emerging from the meeting, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. "Jonathan," she said, as if he were a long-lost friend. "Yeah, I just stopped by for a meeting, but I didn't expect all of this," he replied, feeling a mix of awe and inadequacy. "Welcome to the executive floor," she said, gesturing dramatically. "Want to join us?" he asked, the prospect both daunting and thrilling. "Absolutely." Her enthusiasm was infectious, and as she led him toward the conference room, Jonathan's heart raced. The wheels of opportunity were already turning. Jonathan stepped inside, and instantly all eyes were on him. He felt a rush of warmth spread over him, quickly replaced by a cold wave of self-doubt. But the executive's welcoming smiles added a touch of comfort, anchoring him in this unfamiliar environment. "Everyone, this is Jonathan, our bright junior consultant," Claire announced, pride evident in her voice. Surrounded by palpable energy, Jonathan felt the pressure of expectations weighing on him. He took a deep breath, approaching the table where conversations swirled like a storm. With each word spoken, he realized they were brainstorming strategies to deepen client relationships, a task that excited him but also made his heart race. One executive asked, turning the focus on him. Silence fell. Jonathan hesitated. I think we should focus on emotional connection," he said, his voice shaky but determined. "It's not just about what we offer, it's about how we make them feel." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Had he gone too far? But before he could retreat in panic, Claire's eyes sparkled with encouragement. "That's a great point, tell us more," she urged. With their attention locked on him, Jonathan found his bearings. He shared ideas, weaving a narrative that resonated, and he could see the executives leaning in, responding to his passion. It struck him then he wasn't just a visitor. He was a part of this conversation, a contributor to a bigger vision. As he spoke, he felt an internal shift. The executives didn't just hear him, they valued his input. The room buzzed with discussion as they built off his ideas, and Jonathan felt a rush of adrenaline. There it was, the thrill of collaboration, the magnetic pull of creation that surged between them. After what felt like a whirlwind meeting, the group began to wrap things up. Then an executive turned to Jonathan. "You've definitely got a perspective we could use more of." For a moment his breath caught. Was this real? Just days before he was simply an employee treading water. Now he had captured their interest. I hadn't thought about it, he stammered, the weight of possibility making his heart race. Claire's smile glowed with pride as they stepped out of the conference room. "You did fantastic." Still riding the excitement, Jonathan left the executive floor that day, feeling like he was walking on air. No longer just that unsure consultant, he was beginning to carve a space for himself within the company. Back at the office, the energy from the meeting lingered. He dove into his work with renewed determination. The thrill of contribution wasn't just a fleeting moment, it was an awakening. Every day, Jonathan sought to engage his team differently. He held brainstorming sessions, encouraging everyone to share thoughts without fear. "Let's focus on how we can elevate our brand," he urged during one meeting, his excitement palpable. At first, there was hesitation in his team, but gradually the seeds of enthusiasm began to sprout. Together, they started crafting innovative pitches, weaving storytelling into the fabric of their presentations. Then came the moment he had longed for, a chance to present one of their ideas to a major client. As the day approached, nerves erupted in him like fireworks. Was he ready to stand on this stage? The people before him weren't just there for a pitch. They were there to understand how he could really impact their business. At the meeting, as Jonathan stood in front of the large boardroom table, the atmosphere buzzed with tension. He began with an anecdote, drawing them in, and as he spoke, he felt the rhythm of the room. People leaned forward, drawn into the narrative he had created. One by one, his colleagues chimed in, building on the ideas he'd set in motion. When the presentation concluded, applause erupted, lifting his spirits higher than he could have imagined. Claire exclaimed, her eyes shining. That victory filled him with a sense of purpose. He realized that this journey, from walking into the hotel as a mere visitor to standing confidently before clients, was turning out to be something transformative. With each success came a renewed commitment to lead with passion and creativity. But as the weeks rolled on, Jonathan was faced with moments of challenge. Ideas that once flourished began to meet resistance. Some colleagues preferred the familiar processes they had always used, resistant to change. Jonathan felt a sense of urgency to galvanize the energy that flourished so vividly before. Determined, he initiated discussions, aiming to bridge the gap between old and new. "We can't be afraid to explore," he urged, facing skepticism head-on. Yet the resistance weighed heavy. It was like running against a current. Facing setbacks sometimes meant feeling chastised or ridiculed. As he grappled with the complexity of leadership, self-doubt began to creep in. Was he doing enough? Then one evening after a long day, Jonathan sat in his office, lost in thought. He remembered that first day stepping onto the executive floor. How just visiting had opened a cascade of opportunities. He realized a crucial truth: vulnerability could be a greater strength than he had ever imagined. The next morning, he called for a team meeting and stood before them, the heaviness of his heart laid bare. "I want to share something personal," he began. "I've faced my own challenges in adapting and leading this team through changes." There was a hush in the room as his honesty washed over them. He shared parts of his own journey, allowing them to see the struggles alongside the triumphs. To his surprise, people began to speak up, sharing their own fears about the changes. Suddenly, the walls that had stood between them began to dissolve. "Thank you for sharing that, Jonathan," one colleague said quietly. The meeting blossomed into an open dialogue as colleagues shared ideas and fears alike. Pitfalls and innovations began to flow. In sharing their vulnerabilities, they became more than a team. They became a community united in a common goal. From that day, creativity reigned. Jonathan could feel the dynamics shift, the energy breathe life into their efforts. They explored ideas with newfound vigor, and together they endeavored to rise beyond the walls that once confined them. It was a collective journey they traveled, where every setback became a stepping stone. The team flourished, earning accolades and successfully engaging clients who resonated deeply with their narratives. Months passed and the company continued to grow, but Jonathan's journey was evolving too. One day, he received an email from the executive board, an invitation to present their vision at the upcoming annual gala. His heart raced at the request, nerves swirling in an exhilarating dance. Prepared meticulously, wanting to showcase not only his work but the growth of his team, illuminating the collaborative efforts that transcended individual accomplishments. When the night of the gala arrived, he stood on stage, facing a sea of executives and colleagues. The room was filled with energy, anticipation swirling around him like an electric charge. As he began to speak, his voice echoed with clarity, speaking of the journey, how it had begun with a single visit and transformed into a movement. As he painted the picture of their success, the rhythm flowed naturally, building off every shared story, every challenge they had faced together. He could see the heads nodding, the smiles exchanged. He wasn't just sharing his story, he was narrating theirs. As the applause rang out, he felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. They were not just applauding him, they were celebrating the collective spirit that had brought them all together. After the event, colleagues congratulated him, their expressions filled with warmth and appreciation. It was an acknowledgement of the community they had built, a testament to the power of vulnerability and connection. Jonathan's journey had come full circle. Reflecting on that day in the lobby when he had simply said, "Just visiting," he understood how that singular moment had unlocked a world filled with opportunities. Now, as he stepped outside the Sterling Hotel once again, he took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of life around him. The receptionist greeted him, and he smiled brightly in response. "I'm back to work," he replied confidently, ready for whatever lay ahead, armed with the knowledge that every visit has the potential to lead to something extraordinary. Every step forward could weave a story of growth, courage, and the promise of a vibrant future. In that moment, he knew he was more than just a visitor. He was a creator of his own narrative. "Just visiting," Jonathan said, his voice measured but laced with nervous excitement as he handed his ID to the receptionist at the Sterling Hotel. The moment he spoke those two words, he felt the air shift. The receptionist raised her brows slightly, a flicker of curiosity gleaming in her eyes. "Just visiting, let's make that visit memorable," she responded, her fingers already dancing over the keyboard. In an instant, she printed a silver keycard and slid it across the polished counter. Jonathan couldn't believe what he was hearing. The executive floor. Just a few moments ago, he was a junior consultant on a routine assignment, unsure of his place in a bustling world. Now he held the key to a realm most only dreamed of. The elevator doors closed behind him, and his heart raced as he pressed the button for the top floor. Each ding of the ascending floors felt like a countdown to something monumental. Excitement mingled with anxiety, prickling at the back of his neck. What awaited him up there? The thought propelled him higher, making his pulse quicken. When the elevator doors opened, he was enveloped by an atmosphere that was expansive and vibrant. Sunlight filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating an elegant lounge with plush chairs and modern decor. Groups of people filled the room, their conversations swirling like an energetic cocktail of ambition and creativity. Jonathan stepped out into this new world, feeling both small and alive. He had envisioned the executive floor, but nothing could prepare him for the palpable energy that buzzed through the space. Each lingering conversation and laugh painted a picture of determination and success. As he wandered deeper into the lounge, he felt drawn to a glass-walled conference room where an intense discussion took place. Executives clad in sharp suits animatedly exchanged ideas, their gestures reflecting the weight of decisions that could change the company's direction. Just then, Claire, a colleague, emerged from the room, her eyes lighting up when she spotted him. "Jonathan," she called out, a bright smile gracing her face. "Yeah, I just dropped by for a meeting, but I didn't expect," he started, but his words trailed off as he took in the space again. Claire said, excitement bubbling in her voice. "Want to join us in the meeting?" Jonathan hesitated. The thought of stepping into that room felt daunting. He asked, uncertainty coloring his tone. "Absolutely," Claire replied, already guiding him toward the conference room where powerful minds congregated. The moment they entered, all eyes shifted to him. Jonathan felt the heat of their gazes, his stomach tightening in response. This was it, his chance or his failure. With a nervous smile, he stepped forward, feeling the adrenaline pump through his veins. "Everyone, this is Jonathan," Claire announced, her voice ringing with certainty. Jonathan swallowed hard, trying to shake off the weight of expectations. The atmosphere felt charged. "Hi everyone," he managed, his voice still shaky. "Just visiting," one executive echoed, raising an eyebrow. The question hung in the air, heavy yet exhilarating. Jonathan took a deep breath, recalling the various insights he had absorbed during his time at the firm. He realized he had a unique perspective. "I think we should focus more on emotional connections with our clients," he said, surprising himself with his own boldness. Silence enveloped the room, and Jonathan felt the heat rise in his cheeks had he said too much, but then he noticed Claire leaning forward, her eyes bright. "That's a great point." With each heartbeat, the room shifted. As Jonathan spoke, he felt the tension dissolve, replaced by curiosity. He shared his thoughts on client engagement, weaving stories and relatable examples. He spoke of creating experiences instead of transactions, and the executives began nodding, leaning in closer. The discussion took on a life of its own, the executives bouncing ideas off each other, infused with the freshness Jonathan had injected into the conversation. He felt the thrill of collaboration. It wasn't just about him anymore, it was about a shared vision. After what felt like an exhilarating eternity, the meeting concluded. But just before everyone stood to leave, an influential executive turned to Jonathan. "You've got some unique insights there." His heart pounded like a drum. I hadn't thought about it," Jonathan stuttered, astonished by the invitation. "You should," Claire interjected, her enthusiasm evident. As they exited the conference room, Jonathan felt elation washing over him. This moment, a solid transformation from uncertainty to opportunity, was clarity bursting through the fog of self-doubt. Maybe he wasn't just a consultant, maybe he was someone who could contribute meaningfully. As weeks went by, the excitement he felt that day lingered, propelling him forward. He became more engaged with his team, sharing ideas and encouraging open discussions. The energy shifted. There was a newfound enthusiasm that rippled through their projects. "Let's push the boundaries," he urged during a brainstorming session, his voice steady. At first, there was uncertainty, but his passion sparked intrigue. The ideas began to flow like a fountain in full spring, full of life and creativity. They started fresh initiatives, redesigning presentations to incorporate storytelling elements, capturing their clients' attention in ways they hadn't before. Then came a pivotal moment, a big pitch meeting with a prospective client whose business could elevate their standing significantly. Jonathan felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. Standing in front of high-level executives, he would be representing not just himself, but the potential of his entire team. As the day approached, nervous anticipation settled in. What if they didn't connect? What if he stumbled over his words? But instead of retreating, he leaned into the urgency. He prepared diligently, ensuring each slide he crafted resonated deeply with their target audience. When the day arrived, Jonathan walked into the boardroom, the air thick and electric. He faced a panel of shrewd executives seated at the table, their expressions unreadable. With a deep breath, he began. "Thank you for allowing us this opportunity today." As he shared stories and examples, he noticed the executives beginning to lean forward, interest growing. Jonathan felt a current of confidence surge within him. This was his moment. He spoke passionately, weaving in narratives that aligned with their values, highlighting how his team's approach offered something unique. The presentation culminated in thunderous applause, his heart racing in triumph. Claire cheered as they exited the room, the executives' interest confirmed. They were engaged and excited by what they had heard. But as the weeks passed, Jonathan also faced challenges he hadn't anticipated. Some team members, while initially excited by the change, began settling back into old habits. The momentum he had worked hard to build seemed to falter under the weight of familiarity. The fear of failure began to creep back in, working at the seams of his confidence. One seemingly ordinary day, Jonathan decided to confront the team about their stagnation. "I feel like we're missing the energy we had during the pitch," he began. Skepticism hung in the air, uncertainty palpable. He could feel the tension tightening like a noose around his ambitions. "But change is hard," one colleague said quietly, voicing what others were likely thinking. "I know it is," Jonathan replied, frustration bubbling inside him. "But we can't allow ourselves to fall back." It was a pivotal moment, but Jonathan felt himself wavering. Doubts flooded his mind. Was he pushing too hard? Should he have held back? The fear of backlash started to overshadow his previous confidence. Yet deep down, he knew they had to embrace change or they would be left behind. Days stretched into weeks, each one filled with increasing pressure, and Jonathan felt the weight of leadership settle on his shoulders. He spent sleepless nights contemplating strategies, wondering how he could reignite the team's fire without alienating them. Then one afternoon, an email confirmation sparked a flicker of inspiration. The executive board wanted to see him again, to pitch a new idea for an innovation summit they were planning. Excitement surged within him. It was another chance to step into the light, to validate everything he had built. As he prepared, he poured himself into crafting a presentation that not only showcased their strengths but called for a renewed commitment to growth. He wanted to appeal to both the rational and emotional, drawing on their shared experiences. The night before the presentation, nerves bubbled within him like a pot about to boil over. What if they didn't connect? What if they rejected his ideas? The doubts lingered like shadows, teasing at the edges of his confidence. But he reminded himself of the journey, the challenges he had faced, and the triumphs he had celebrated. Finally, the day arrived. Standing in front of a new audience of executives, Jonathan felt the weight of their expectations. As he began, the room felt alive, tension crackling in the air. He shared stories of the struggles, the potential, the excitement of innovation. He poured his heart into it, fueled by the desire to engage not just their minds but their spirits. As he wrapped up, he glanced around the room. Executives were nodding thoughtfully, and for the first time, Jonathan felt like he belonged in this space. But as he finished, just as applause erupted, a familiar voice cut through the applause. "Interesting ideas, Jonathan," said the head of the board, a seasoned executive known for his brutal honesty. "But I'm not convinced this is the direction we should take. You're thinking small." The weight of his words struck like a cold gust of wind. Jonathan's heart sank. Just when he thought he had captured their attention, doubt loomed again. Gathering himself, he took a deep breath and replied, "I understand your concern, but growth isn't just about big ideas. It's about nurturing the small ones too, building on them." But in the back of his mind, a new fear crept in. Had he crossed a line? Was he losing their trust, unraveling the connections he had so carefully cultivated? As the meeting concluded, Jonathan left feeling untethered. He had ventured so far, yet now it seemed like he stood at the edge of an abyss. Uncertainty loomed large in front of him, shadows of self-doubt whispering that he had jeopardized everything he had fought for. And as he made his way out of the conference room, Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking a tightrope above chaos, a thin line between ambition and collapse. Would he find his footing again, or had he ventured too far into the unknown? The journey was far from over, and the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on his shoulders, propelling him into the next chapter of his unfolding story.